Hello and welcome to another episode of It Came from the Page. Yes, I am back. I know. Some of you are like, oh yeah, I forgot that this guy existed. Other people, and most people, sent me very nice messages when I said earlier this year that I was just dropping Booktube and just kind of going off and doing other things in life. And it turned out, the fact is that all those other things in life that I thought I was going to go do did not happen. This has been a year where, including Booktube early on, in that I have failed at every single thing I have tried out. Like from personal to, artistically to everything in between. Literally, I tried to hook back up my, external mic for this, and I realized the port for charging my phone has been inconsistent and it wouldn't stay connected. And I was just like, oh, that's just another thing that goes wrong. It's fine. It's the life of going wrong. But, when everything in your life pretty much fails horribly. I mean, February was okay, but everything other than that failed horribly. And it is kind of freeing to eventually get to the other side of that and go, oh, all of those big changes I thought that were going to happen, which would have been good, some of them would have been probably bad in hindsight, like moving. I don't think that would have ever been a good idea, but that was originally on the table. They're not happening. So now the entire rest of my year looks exactly the same as it did last year. Like, exactly. Nothing's going to change. It's going to be the exact same. And, there's something freeing about the idea that you can go from being everything is changing this year to nothing at all is changing this year and end up going like, that's fine, I guess. It's like, I might as well go back doing Booktube. I might as well go back doing some of my hobbies that I had dropped off because I was so in preparation mode and constantly thinking about other things. And it turned out that didn't need to worry about those. They weren't going to happen. And, I was like, okay, well, I can still enjoy my life as it is for what it is and, come back to do Booktube and come back to doing more reading and getting out of the slump that I was in for like most of the year and, talking about things because I realize people in your normal lives do not ask you what you're reading. They never do. Nobody cares. People in non-Booktube spaces, they just don't ask you. They don't ask you. And I was like, I read a lot. And nobody is like, well, I read a lot. And, my Booktube doing very poor numbers was, one of the reasons why I quit. But I kind of also realized that it's like, well, I mean, if you fail at everything in a year, what's the worst that can happen? Coming back and it fails again? Oh, who cares? I don't care at that point. It's like when you're at the bottom, it's like literally anything else is, you're either going up or you're just staying at the bottom. So I've been trying new places that I've never eaten at before. All these little changes in my life that I'm like, well, worst thing it could be is bad. And then it would still be just the same as it is right now. So it's like, it's kind of freeing to be like, you could try anything because if you fail, you can't go down any farther. You're just at the bottom. So now most things are looking up because that's the only way to look. There's no more down. So, that kind of sounds depressing, but whatevs, it's the truth. So now I'm just kind of trying to get back into the swing of things, read more, talk about books more. I got a few projects on the go that I'm hoping to do. Maybe they'll also be failures. Who knows? That's how the year goes. But if they are, that's okay. At least I'm trying something different and doing something on my own. But I thought coming back to Booktube, I would, take this time to talk a little bit about the things that I have been reading lately. And, it hasn't been a lot. I stopped in April, and since May, it's just been a hodgepodge of fuckery. And so I have not been reading very much. And when I say fuckery, I mean self-imposed. I am supplying the fuckery to myself by overthinking everything in life. I thought I would start in May, talk a little bit about it. And there's not going to be a whole lot to say with a lot of these things. But it is kind of interesting to go through and see what I've been up to because I really have not been reading as much as I would have liked. So starting off in May, I did finish The People We Met on Vacation by Emily Henry. let me tell you, these last few months, the only person getting me through this all is Emily Henry books. I love Emily Henry, and this book is no different. I really, really love this book, and I had a great time with it. And so far, I've never disliked a single Emily Henry book that I've read so far. And also, something about this year, and something what's nice about a lot of her books is that, they start when a character is like at their lowest and being like bleh, and then something cool happens and they get out of that rut and they get back into enjoying life and finding a relationship and finding other things. And I was like, oh, maybe that's the thing. Maybe I'm just at the bottom of the first chapter of a new super cool Emily Henry romance. Who knows? Could happen. We will see. But yes, People We Meet on Vacation is very fun, and I really liked it. Warhammer, there's a lot of Warhammer here. Just, bear with me. Fulgrim the Perfect Son, Fulgrim the Phoenician, comes back to the Warhammer 40,000 setting, and he is kind of like this smutty demigod who is this purple snake man, and he is amazing. I love him. I actually really did enjoy this book. This is by Jude Reed, a female author, and this doesn't focus a lot on Fulgrim. I know some people get mad with the title because it's Fulgrim, but it's more about how his legion of warriors are affected by how he is. And, he is this character who, has these obsessions with people, and then he kind of grows tired with them and throws them away. And it's kind of, about that. It's about, what does it mean to be favored by a man who will only really give you his attention for a very, very brief amount of time before throwing you away. And spending your entire lives trying to get the approval of somebody who will never truly care about you is really, really interesting, and I really, really liked it. Then I read a bunch of arcs. So EC, Cruel Universe, Volume 1. This is the new EC comics. They've come back, and they're doing... Cruel Universe is their sci-fi dystopian kind of branch of what they're doing. And yeah, this was pretty good. A lot of stories in this collection. So it's a comic book collection, and in each comic books there's multiple stories, like any version of that. Some are good, some are bad, but I would say more were good than bad, and I'm really happy to see EC Comics back in the game doing interesting things. Please Don't Bring Your Greatsword Into My Office by Guy Lingham. Now, this is an interesting book because it is a book that is something that I've kind of read a fair bit recently, which is, a fantasy world combined with an office setting. My favorites being, Love, Laugh, Lich, Orc from the Office, those level of silly smut books set in office varieties. But I also think they're good relationships. I know it sounds weird to say that there's a good relationship between an orc and a lady, but the orc works in IT. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He's interesting. They go to a spa at one point. Anyways, that's a good book. But, that idea of two worlds colliding and still kind of ending up in the ho-drum lifestyle of, an office, but with a fantasy tinge. This is another in those, but this is a more serious book in that it's kind of this office is being kind of attacked in a more kind of die-hardy way, and it kind of is a lot about society and how we treat people and how we treat animals and livestock and, how we justify our own actions. And, a lot of the characters have a lot more depth to them that you might be expecting from at first, kind of you just go, oh, it's Die Hard, but it's a fantasy office and there's minotaurs and stuff. But it actually is much more focused on character and history and motivations and how we look at the world. And I think it's done really quite well, and, a very interesting book that I would definitely recommend. The Rocketeer Breaks Free. This is a sequel to the Disney movie, The Rocketeer. But there are apparently multiple comics of this, and this is the second volume of that. So I hadn't read the first volume, but I had watched the movie because I love The Rocketeer, and I was kind of at first a little bit confused as there are characters who are very much farther ahead than they were in the movie and having different kind of relationships and stuff like that. But, it's a comic book, and basically the Rocketeer's in San Francisco punching Nazis. What do you want? That's what you want. I'm telling you right now, what you go, what do I want? And that's what you want. You want the Rocketeer punching Nazis. Of course you do, because you're watching this. And, you get what you paid for. Well, it was an arc, so I didn't pay anything, but I would recommend you do, because I actually thought it was really good. Cool artwork and a fun little story. The Tides of Insouth, an Arkham Horror Investigators game book. Now, this is another one of those game books where you have, characters with stats, kind of like a solo RPG. You roll to see how you do and how you pass investigation moves. And this one was really interesting because it's all about, the town of Innsmouth, which is a very famous town in the lore of H.P. Lovecraft. And it has a lot of tricky elements to it. I think this one is a lot harder than the first game book that I played in the Arkham Horror line. Same author, and I think this one just kind of like ramps up the difficulty a little bit more, and it takes a lot of more experimentation to figure out exactly what in the world is going on and how it all kind of relates to everything and what is going to be the central solution to this problem. And yeah, it was just really, really fun. I have really kind of grown fond of those solo game books where you just kind of have a pair of dice and have a pen and paper and make decisions. So I really do enjoy that, and it was a good experience overall. The next is the Dungeons & Dragons novel, which is Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd by Delilah S. Dawson. Now, I had only really played the D&D for Ravenloft. I think Ravenloft is the only one that I've played before. So I recognized kind of like the broad strokes of what the characters were kind of going into this land for. And Ravenloft is basically like kind of like the gothic horror segment of D&D. And I know some people who are very much into the Ravenloft setting don't like this game as much because they think that it kind of like mischaracterizes certain things or it switches up the world in ways that they don't like. But for me, I just thought the characters were really, really solid. The gothic horror was really great. And also, like, why would I want to play or read the exact same thing as what I played before? It's like, I like how this kind of does its own thing, and the character of Strahd von Zedovich is this really fun vampire, and it's him trying to seduce, like, one member of the party, and it's all of these really interesting characters who have really great back and forths, and they all have kind of dark secrets as to why they're where they are right now, and yeah, I just really liked it. I really liked it. Especially there was, like, a freaking Raven character called Ka, and she was the coolest. She was cool. I really liked her. So yeah, I had a great time with this book. If you're a fan of D&D and you just like to read characters going on an adventure, or you're just kind of in the mood for kind of a more fantasy-inspired gothic horror, definitely would recommend. The Mask of Fear, Star Wars Reigns of the Empire by Alexander Freed. Now this was, a book that was pushed as being a Andor-esque Star Wars book. And yeah, this is a lot like the television show Andor, and I really like that television show. I never watched season 2 until I read this book, and I was like, I better go watch season 2, because yeah, wow, this was a great book, this made me fall in love with Mon Mothma, which is very, very strange to say out loud, because Mon Mothma in the original trilogy is just some girls just like, yo, I got this cool dress, and we're gonna kill the emperors, and you're like, cool, but like also like, what are we doing here? But this goes a lot into the politics of Star Wars, and it is really a thing that's unfortunately very relatable, especially if you're living in the US, where it's just kind of trying to decipher all of the ways that we use to combat fascism, and is really kind of all about the idea that the left needs to unite, because all of these are needed. It's not just singular people on their own will solve this. So, like, for example, Mon Mothma, she's trying to do it the legal way. She's trying to pass bills. She's trying to, get ex-separatists on board for a very specific bill that will hamper some of the powers of the Emperor in the Senate and stop what happened from him taking over everything kind of thing. Then there is Bail Organa, and Bail Organa is trying to make the world know about the truth of the Jedi. He's doing a kind of a more journalistic approach, trying to get the truth about what is happening to the people. And then there's Saw Gerrera, who is the person who is kind of like setting up these more militarized attacks against fascist like structures, and they all have their pluses and bonuses, but in the end they all kind of fail because they don't know how to work together, and they don't know how to make what they're trying to do part of a whole movement instead of just individualistic elements to try to combat a force that is way bigger than just them. So yeah, if you're at all into political landscapes and you just want to read a Star Wars version of that, high recommend. It was an excellent book. Another Warhammer book, Elemental Council, which is all about the Tau, and this book rocked. This book was so good. This book was so good. If you read any Warhammer book, I would definitely recommend this. This is brilliant. All of the characters were, well, not any. I will make a better Warhammer starter guide someday, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But I love this book. I think this book is fantastic and is all about the Tau, who are this alien race who are, united under this idea of the greater good. And it's kind of all about the actual realities of trying to, quote unquote, be ethical in also being a colonialist, expansionist empire, which is that's not really how it works. Efficacy, colonialism, and being ethical are not. You can't do it. It's not how it works. So it's really interesting about all of these characters having to kind of combat their own ideas of what it means to serve the quote-unquote greater good. And yeah, just a great book. Where the Falcon Flies, a 3,400-kilometer Odyssey from my doorstep to the Arctic. This is by Adam Schultz. I have listened to multiple of his books before, and this is just kind of the latest in the thing. And what he does is he travels all around Canada, usually with a canoe, usually in dangerous, wild places, and he does it on his own. And this is him trying to find and follow the path of the Peregrine Falcon as it goes from, his doorstep, which is in southwestern Ontario at the time, to the Arctic. He literally goes down in canoes and portages through all of these elements of Canada, all of these very rural, very isolated areas of Canada, and it's just really beautiful. And I love the way that he describes the nature and his journey and how he gets from one step to the other, and just the precautions he takes and how dangerous a lot of it is, and things that can, be the stumbling blocks, but still, end up looking beautiful in the end. And it's just an awesome story, and really one of those things about someone saying that, can they do a thing? Yes, they can, and they do it, which was awesome. SpiderGwen Volume 1. This is SpiderGwen, which is an alternate universe of Spider-Man-ish thing where Gwen Stacy got Spider-Man powers instead of Peter Parker. And yeah, this is a fun little comic series. I, on my Patreon, had a reading event going on called Spider-May, but then I didn't participate in Spider-May at all because I was having mostly a mental breakdown all of May. And so it was just like I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything in May. So this is my one Spider-Man related thing that I actually got done. Then the Maleficent 7, which is a reread for me. One of my favorite books. I love this book. And it is all about the worst people. It's like a fantasy book, but it's basically the plot is like the worst people possible have to fight the church to save a town. And that's just chef's kiss. All these characters are great. The reread was so good. Definitely holds up on the reread. Then there is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Book Lovers by Emily Henry is my new favorite novel of all time. This book is like that rare 6-star novel that I was at a terrible place mentally. And this is like the one thing that one, I could focus on to help me through, and two, that made me go oh yeah, it's okay. I will be okay. I can survive this feeling. I can survive this trial. It's gonna be hard, but I can survive, and there are other things for me out there, and eventually I will find those. And it's it was that thing of basically, the plot is, there is these two characters, and the main woman at the start is she has been that person who is that quote unquote frigid career woman that in every rom-com is the one who gets dumped for this I'm going off to live in a small town with my family and friends kind of thing. And it's like happened to her multiple times. And it's her like dealing with the fact of like that, like every time one of her like person she's dating goes on vacation to a small town, they end up coming back and like and breaking up with her because they found like the woman of their dreams. There's like this manic pixie, dream person in a romantic comedy kind of thing. And it just like it's kind of like examining what it's like to be the loser of those kind of like love triangles and those elements of romances where it's like what happens to the people who don't win at love all the time. And it's like it's a book about them finding love, and I'm like, oh, this is literally exactly what I needed right now. And yeah, this is my favorite book of all time now because it picked me up in a very, very, very hard time of my life. So thank you, Emily Henry. You're still doing the work. Era of Ruin by Dan Abnett and others. This is a Warhammer Horus Heresy coda. So basically, the Warhammer Horus Heresy was the 60-plus book series because there was like 54 books of the mainline Horus Heresy series, and then the end of that series ended in this big thing called the Siege of Terra, which ended up being, I think, 9 books, 10 books with this, because the last book was split into 3. And this is a short story collection where it's kind of wrapping up and highlighting these elements of this giant series that I've read all of, and wrapping them up in a way that kind of highlights what's cool and that wraps up character threads and plot threads that you really did not have a satisfying conclusion for in the main series. So yeah, this was a great coda and had some really beautiful stories in it and some really great writing, and it was really fun to see some characters get final endings, and some of them actually the closest a Warhammer book gets to a happy ending, and you're like, oh, that's nice, I love this. So yeah, that was great. Dungeons and Dragons, The Fallbacks, dealing with dragons. This is another D&D arc that I got, and I really like this one too. This is the second book in a series, and I hadn't read the first one, and I'm definitely going to go back and read that because this is great. This is all about there's these characters who are all very different and have their different goals in mind, but the main plot is their dwarf bard is being kind of hunted by this evil draconic god deity, and he is trying to have him bring him back into the world kind of thing. And it's him being kind of haunted by this evil dragon god, and how him and his friends kind of work to get out of that situation. The action was awesome. The characters, great. Oh my god. Look at them. Oh, look at them. They're so cute. I don't know if you could have always seen them. I'll have to see the edit, but oh, look at them, so cute. This is my party. They helped me. So yeah, that was just a great book with a great cast of characters. Next up, Sons of the Hydra. This is a Warhammer book all about the Alpha Legion. It is a small group of people who keep doing very intense and wild things that take a lot of planning and proper espionage, and it's a really fun espionage book in the world of Warhammer, and there's some amazing descriptions of a demon world. I had a great time with this one. Perturabo, the Hammer of Olympia. This is part of the Horus Heresy Primarch series, which is different from the Horus Heresy that I was just talking about, but this highlights main characters from that, and this one was Perturabo, and he is a very bitter bitch. And he is pretty much a colossal asshole. He has reasons for it, and you kind of find out how and why and what made him the way he is in this book, and I thought it was really good. And also, there's a part of this book that brought back a character named Barabas Duntioch, who was the main character in a book that I read next, which is Guy Haleys Pharaoh, and that was a 5-star reread from the Horus Heresy, and it was fun to see the beginnings of that character in the Perturabo book that made me want to go back and revisit him in Pharaoh. Pharaoh is just a wonderful book, but it is part of a giant series, so, if you're in the series, don't skip that one, but, if you're haven't started the series, I'll have to go through them all one day. Universal Monsters Frankenstein. I recently read this on vacation. This is the graphic novel that is in this new Universal Monsters kind of 4-part comic book series that they've been doing so far. I have read the thing for Dracula, and I thought that was quite good, but it didn't really feel like the 1930 Dracula movie. Whereas this one really felt like the 1930 Frankenstein movie, in that the entire story is intertwined and using elements from that movie to tell the story. So, highly recommend you go back, watch the original Frankenstein, read this book, and then watch Bride of Frankenstein. Because I think they're all a really kind of like nice little to each other. Then I read Gialosaurus, a Splattersaurus knockoff. A spin-off, sorry, it's not a knockoff, but I read this because Kelsey from Simon Slashers is doing the Giallo readathon with Alex the Bookubus, and this was one of the books that was on her TBR, and I just read it because it was like, there's a dinosaur in a Giallo book, what? So that I read it, and I was like, oh, whoa, amazing, that's really cool. This is basically like a weird dinosaur sci-fi book where like there's sentient dinosaur aliens who have landed on Earth and are kind of like working with us and like existing with us. And then there's a Giallo told in the middle. And the Giallo, pretty damn good, pretty damn accurate to a lot of the tropes and little in-jokes of Giallo movies. So yeah, just thought it was a fantastic read. Bad Movie Night by Patrick Lacey. This was a little horror novella that really got to the heart of, our relationship with media and how it kind of can affect us, and really a kind of depressing, dark little book that I thought had a lot of unique elements to it that really does make it worth watching. And also it really is funny because it's very much all about, like, it's about a kind of about the movie Spookies. In the book, I think it's called Creepies, and it, like, the plot is different, but they really have, like, detailed what went on with the movie Spookies, which used to be like this big hard to find movie that recently had a big re-release by Vinegar Syndrome and is great if you've never seen it. But it's funny that, this pretty dark, disturbing novel is intertwined through a history of a very funny, silly 80s horror movie. Another Emily Henry. Thank you, Emily, for coming down and saving me. Beatree. This book, another 5 stars from Emily Henry. She don't miss. I'm gonna run out of Emily Henry books soon, and that's sad. I guess I'm gonna try like Abby Jimenez and a lot of the other very big romance authors, because yeah, I read romance now. Storm of Damocles, the final book that we will talk about today. This is another Warhammer novel, and this is just a really interesting story about the White Scars chapters, who are kind of like all kind of based off of, Mongolian, Genghis Khan type things. That's kind of like their, like, a future space version of that, and it's them against the Tau, who we're already talking about, who is all about the quote-unquote greater good and all of that jazz. So yeah, this was just a really good kind of quick space marine battle thing that I read on the plane when I was like a red-eye flight, and I needed something simple and fun to read, and it fulfilled all of my requirements. So yeah, have you read any of these books? What romances would you recommend? And what would you like to see on this channel in the future? Thank you guys, and have yourself a wonderful day. Goodbye.